Hi all, let's have a look at game 3 of the World Chess Championship. Fabiano Caruana playing white against Magnus Carlsen. E4, so a repeat of game 1 actually, the opening of game 1, with the Rosalimo attack, so Nimzovich-Rosalimo attack system. Bishop b5. We have g6, bishop takes, d takes, d3, bishop g7, white castles, and here is a surprising new move which caused a bit of a stir, a reaction in Fabiano's face, and there's a Twitter post about this to check out. I'll give the link to that in the pinned comments of this video. So, curiosity about this move. I checked on ChessBase Livebook, and the statistics are actually quite good for white, but it's kind of lower rated players, games mostly in this. It does have a certain logic to it to support e5 and keep things flexible, not committing the knight or the bishop or anything, or the pawn. Just keeping things flexible, seeing what white will do to be able to play the most effective thing on white's configuration. Now, white committed to rook e1. The highest level game I have as a reference here is h3. This is quite a popular move to play h3 here. This occurred in Moore against Norkic, so they're both over 2400, and that ended in a win for white in just 26 moves. Let's have a quick look at that game. So there was pressure on e5, the b4 plan, and black maybe was making some weaknesses here, and white fractured those pawns, took on f5. It looks pretty dicey actually, black's pawns here. They've been shredded into 4 different pawn islands, so this doesn't look entirely healthy. And now this tactical skirmish here, and black actually resigned there, quite a crush. So that was kicked off with h3. I'm not saying h3 is a win by force, but h3 does seem to score well according to ChessBase Livebook here. So anyway, in this game, rook e1, and we have e5, a3. And you might think this is a curious plan. I've actually played on the black side of this in some over-the-board game. I think it was against Adelaja once. And basically, why is white interested in undoubling your pawns, you might think, or undoubling the pawns here? It's to do with piece activity, and sometimes you get more exploitable weaknesses. So, from a theoretical perspective, yes, double pawns are weak, but it's actually being able to exploit them. Here, knight f6, and we have b4. And Magnus didn't actually want to undouble his pawns here, and in fact treated this as a pawn sacrifice by just castling. If the pawns get undoubled, so we go from a structural weakness to more of white having good active pieces here. So this rook has been activated. The bishop has a clear line to also a7. Furthermore, the c5 square could be good for operations later. I'll give you an example. In fact, the bishop might want to go to b2 as well to hit e5, just an example. But this is fairly pleasant. But actually, in this critical line with the e5 pressure, it seems even this, black has resources like b5. This I found quite interesting. Even if there is a ganging up on e5, we just check this out for a moment. There's f6. Where does the knight go? So the position is not that easy, even if this happens. And on knight a5 here, then bishop g4. So this kind of scenario isn't that bad either. On bishop takes e5, yeah, just to show, yeah, there's some problems even with the idea of just ganging up on e5. So, okay. Black, though, treated it as a pawn sacrifice here. So Magnus Carlsen treated it as a pawn sac. So let's see what happens. Knight bd2 happens. On b takes c5, there's a few ways to try and regain the pawn to cause white discomfort, at least. For example, knight d7 would provoke bishop e3. And then f5 looks like quite a tasty attacking move, which you'd want to play for f4 later. So if e takes here, this position, it looks as though black should be absolutely fine if taking here and then again hitting c5. Because black's got that clamp against the d4 move, this is quite a dislocated pawn on c5, and this should result in an even position. There's also, just curiously, either queen a5 or queen e7. But again, this is slightly less favourable circumstances than that, actually. Here, white actually might be getting a small edge. So probably the best way to cause white problems is knight fd7. That, I believe this was the main intention. Knight going to d7 here to try and provoke bishop e3. So anyway, it's totally ignored with knight bd2. So we have bishop g4 pinning the knight. There might be some other ways to keep the tension in the position, but this is the one chosen. So giving up the light square bishop, which does intensify potentially the pressure on the dark squares. As we know from a lot of leader games, giving up a certain bishop, you get more pressure sometimes on the other colour of the bishop. So here we have h3 prompting that bishop to be exchanged. So black should be more comfortable in theory, you'd think, on the dark squares. And actually, Magnus took now on b4 and challenged this a file immediately with a5. If it's not challenged, say h6, is it a big deal? Well, this is actually a target in its own right, so might be slightly biased, but if, say, a5 here, yeah, queen c1, maybe black doesn't even want to play a move like that, but this kind of position is a big advantage for white. Yeah, black has to be a bit careful what sort of move to play. So a5, though, there might be an interesting continuation here. In the game, we had b takes, rook takes, and bishop d2, which allows black to keep the staring contest of the rooks going. Hello there, opposing rooks. Hello there. So the staring contest, but this didn't need to necessarily happen. It seems bishop d2 might have had potential. Sorry, it seems the forcing move rook takes a5 and now bishop d2, because black is clinging on to the e5 pawn. This might have had potential to cause discomfort. If queen a2, we just take on e5. If queen b5, then there's queen a1, which is quite nifty. Not only taking that a file, but also hitting e5. And if we look at this, bishop c3, a nice battery, this becomes an ideal scenario, it seems, for hitting e5. And if f6, that doesn't look too good in theory. We could end up with a position where this is an advantage, a big advantage for white, if black's not playing too accurately. But yeah, it does seem as though this is dangerous, potentially. What does black actually do? Let's say queen c7, queen a1, knight d7. Now here, is it such a big deal? If bishop c3, rook e8, queen a3, technically it's about even, actually. If we go with centralizing a bishop instead, just keeping the bishop flexible on both sides of the board, then this position where white has that a file, white's content to have the a file, and it seems pleasant enough. White might have a small edge here. It's perhaps something to go for with a small edge. So that might have been an opportunity, but it's not such a fantastic deal, you know, really. Bishop d2, rook a8. Okay. Yeah, if black obliges with rook takes a1 for this position, then yeah, similar kind of situation, controlling, yeah, similar situation. White has a small edge. Knight c5 would parry the f7 attack here. So rook a8, we have queen b1, knight d7. And then the curious queen b4, which is a move I was investigating in during the actual live play of this game. We have rook fe8. It's not that harmful, the queen e7 threat, by the way, pinning the knight. So at the moment, we have bishop c3. If, for example, rook takes to try and get in queen e7, just bishop f8 kicks the queen over here. This should be absolutely fine for black. There's no big problem with knight g5. There's always resources here to defend h7, like knight f6 or maybe h6. So it's not a big deal, this position, either. So anyway, bishop c3 is played. And now black plays b5. Magnus plays b5. Okay, one thing structurally to point out is white has one more solid, perhaps, pawn island in theory. Black has two pawn islands, so 1 and 2. Does that make a difference? Sometimes you want pawns supporting each other, so in a theoretical sense, you could say that white has the more solid pawn structure here. Okay, rook takes rook a1, and we have all the rooks coming off. Queen a7, bishop c3, queen a2, hitting c2, that's parried. So the queens come off. f6, which frees up the bishop, so relieving the bishop, protecting e5. The kings come to the center. So we have knight c3. Okay, bishop c3. White doesn't necessarily need to force anything soon with d4. It might leave black with a 2-to-1 pawn majority by doing that, which might be a problem potentially. Bishop c3, knight e6, g3, bishop f8, knight d2. We have knight g5 teasing the pawn to go forward. So an interesting moment here, provoking h4. And one of the ideas, for example, on knight b3, h5, is potentially black might be getting the possibility of, if white plays badly, an outside pass pawn. Let's just illustrate that. So bishop d6, bishop d2, bishop d6 was played, but just to illustrate a bad sequence which wouldn't ever happen, g5, let's imagine g5 and white took, then there is the potential for an outside passed pawn, which could be a pain for white. But white is not obliged to go in for this at all. Could just leave the pawns as they are. So anyway, bishop d6 was played, c3, c5. Yeah, just to show it here. So g5 again. This would be an outside pass pawn potential, but white doesn't play that. White would just keep still and just wait for black to do something, just to keep the pawn structure basically symmetrical, and without black having an outside potential pass pawn. This would be even here. So there's no problems really. c5, we have bishop e3, king e7, king d1, king d7, king c2, f5. Again, white doesn't have to take on f5. That might lead to an imbalance which might be slightly favourable to black. Just to show that, if e takes, g takes, in fact, black might actually get a significant advantage here in this line, because look at this, e4 hitting this pawn and then winning h4. This would be a big advantage to black, but it's totally avoidable. White just basically essentially keeps the structure as intact as possible and symmetrical, and just plays king d1. So inviting a totally no, it's not totally symmetrical. No, it's not having that potential that we've just seen. This pawn structure is intact as long as this bishop is under lock and key by its own pawn on e5. So we don't want this pawn structure here under scrutiny. So here we have f takes. So it's not quite a symmetrical pawn structure. Black has a 2-to-1 pawn majority here to play with. And Magnus plays c4, which gives the idea that potentially the knight's coming in to either a4 or d3. And in fact, this is played now. Knight c5. A quieter move, not offering another trade down, is like this, which just, yeah, maybe here the same thing could happen like the game. So anyway, knight c5, that's taken. Yep, although this looks committal, it's fine actually. White can quite easily draw this by getting rid of some pawns now, which we're about to see. So black plays b4 here. There's nothing much else to do here because there's no real entry point for the king. It will be unwise for the king to try and make an entrance, by the way, over here, I believe, because in the meantime there's always f4 and f5 creating dangerous pass pawns over there. So that would be far too dangerous to try and do that. b4, c takes, bishop takes, knight e3, hitting the pawn. Pawn's protected. Now f4, getting rid of some more pawns, getting to basically a theoretically drawn position, which is in all the table bases, but very simple number of pieces. Knight takes c4 is forcing a total drawn position, basically. King takes c4. In fact, even this, even if black takes on e4, this is still a draw, by the way, because black can just end up taking the h pawn, and the knight's not winning by itself. So, yeah, it's drawn here as well, just doing this. So the game ended here, just to show why this is a theoretical table-based draw, which Leela Chess in some tournaments recently, unfortunately, against lower-rated engines, especially against Crafty, managed to have like the black side with the extra bishop. So let's show this, why this is a problem. The king essentially heads for h1, which is the bishop can't really, because it's on a dark square, the bishop can't kick the king out of a light square. So just to show black taking, first of all, that pawn, then this pawn, we end up with a position which the king can't be evicted, basically. Here, king h3 would be a stalemate. And also, yeah, if bishop c5 check, sorry, if king h1, bishop c5 is immediate stalemate. There's just no move. So the stalemate resource is very important in chess for these endgames. Okay, so yeah, totally theoretically drawn here position would result. So I'll take you back to the game ending position. So it's interesting at least that the Sicilian defense is being played, but it's not like in its full glory. It's not like the open Sicilian. And maybe the open Sicilian will be uncorked later in the match. So maybe this is the quiet before the storm. This is a bit of a tamer, more positional Sicilian defense variation with this bishop b5, the Rosalimo system. Okay, I hope you enjoyed a bit of this game analysis. And if you want to click on the top left box, which should appear shortly, you can play against other YouTubers, potentially play at Chess World. And you can also check this analysis and other analysis from the improved menu, Learn from the Masters. And I'll also be simulating some key positions, critical positions from the World Championship match with the help of Leela Chess. So there's some interesting analysis on past games as well. Okay, to check out. Comments, questions, likes, shares, subscribes with the notification bell, all appreciated. Thanks very much.